The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, this is Henry from 3DCart. I'm the product manager, and I'd like to say thanks for joining us today for our webinar with IDology. Now, IDology recently partnered with 3DCart, and they have this the ability to offer ID verification solutions for 3DCart merchants. It's pretty useful in not only preventing fraud for your online stores, but also for merchants who might need age verification in order to sell their specific wares, where age restrictions must be met. So with us today are Jody Florence and Sean Ellis from IDology, and they're going to tell us a little bit about their product so we can learn more about IDology and what they can offer for your stores. So Jody and Sean, whenever you're ready, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Henry, and thanks for having us today.
No problem.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I'm Jody Florence. I'm the VP of Marketing at IDology, and I have with me Sean Ellis. And we're going to be talking about how you can balance security and profit using identity verification. And bear with me just one second. What we're going to cover is security and fraud, the industry in general, and why it's important for you as merchants. IDology's identity verification solutions, so what are they and how do they work? And then some common misconceptions that we often hear from retailers and merchants about why they don't want to use identity verification, but the reasons why they actually really should. So to basically start it off, I'm showing a cartoon that's pretty famous, and I'm sure most of you have probably seen it before. It comes from the New Yorker, and it was published back in the 80s or early 90s. And it's, the caption reads, "On the internet, nobody knows you're a dog." And as internet and mobile applications continue to grow, this image is really the only one that perfectly conveys the issue that we all face as businesses and consumers. And the humor in it, basically is they really are dogs. So, it's knowing that they really are dogs is what we're trying to accomplish. So the problem, though, is that businesses don't know who their online customers are, and they're starting to mitigate these fraud risks by asking for and storing loads of personal information about their consumers in an effort to basically trust their consumers. But in actuality, this is actually leading to the problem. So I'm going to ask y'all a quick question, and basically this number, I want to know how many of y'all know what this number represents. So there's a couple of different answers for you. It could be the number of people in the United States. It could be the total number of records breached. It could be the number of people who have been affected by a breach. Or it could be the total number of identity theft cases ever reported. So Henry, maybe you can help me out, and I can't really see how the poll's going. So
right. Actually, the majority here are saying it's the total number of data records breached. Is that correct?
Actually, that is correct. Awesome. So everybody understands what that means, and that's great. According to the Privacy Rights Clearinghouse, which has been tracking data breaches since 2005, this is the total number of records that have been breached. But if you break that down into the retail industry, the number of records is close to 116 million, or a little bit over 116 million. And that's just from a total of 267 breaches. So the retail industry represents 21% of the breach records, of all the total records breached. And I do want to distinguish that this number doesn't necessarily mean people or individuals, but it's actual records. So my information could have been compromised multiple times, but Sean's information might not have been compromised at all. But to kind of put this in context, the number of people that the U.S. Census shows living in the United States since June is, just over 312 million. So it's really kind of just a matter of time before you, if you haven't, become a victim of a data breach, or your consumers become a victim of a data breach. And while identity theft rates have actually declined slightly compared to previous years, it is still recognized as the fastest growing crime, and it's a real concern for retailers. The identity theft, the data breaches that are taking place, do have a correlation on identity theft because the information that's being stolen is somehow helping fraudsters to gain more knowledge about you and consumers and impersonate them. And last year, in 2010, retailers reported losing $2.7 billion to fraud. So you can see this problem is of significance to retailers everywhere, large and small. So some of the market drivers for merchants and why they're looking for identity verification solutions and use an identity and age verification solution is basically because of the higher incidence of fraud. I mean, even if you do have a low number of incidences, the economic impact can be significant from just one incident, so depending on what you're selling. Certainly, there are definitely more items that are more attractive to fraudsters, like electronics or jewelry, and no online business is safe, especially with the growth of online reseller markets like eBay and Craigslist. So someone can go buy your goods and then turn around and sell them on eBay or Craigslist for a profit, and all using a stolen credit card. Another factor is merchants have slower processing rates and fulfillment times with shipping orders because they're manually having to review these orders prior to shipping them out to make sure that they are sending them to real, legitimate people. And they're looking for ways to leverage automation and still drive revenue without slowing down their processing costs and while also still preventing fraud. And then finally, there are some compliance concerns. So if you're providing an age-restricted product or service, such as tobacco or wine, there are definitely laws that you must meet to ensure that you're not conducting business online with a minor. And then there are also other financial-related compliance regulations that might affect you, such as OFAC, making sure that someone's not a terrorist, or even if you're offering any of your consumers some sort of credit opportunity to purchase your goods, you have to follow the compliance regulations for red flags. So how do you do this? How do you know who your customer is, and how do you build trust? And basically, there's several different levels of identity verification that are used both online or in a call center, basically anywhere where you can't check someone's ID in person. And the first one, and it's the most basic one, is the honesty policy. So this is essentially doing nothing. This is saying, I trust you, and I'm going to believe that what you're telling me is true. And while this might work for a social network or perhaps an online community, it's probably not a good policy for you to follow in the retail industry, since you do have hard goods associated with what you're selling. The next level is probably one that a lot of you are very familiar with, and it's address and credit card verification. You might actually already be using this in your business today. And really what this level of verification is doing is it's a data matching product. So it's looking at things like the name and the address, and it's matching it to what's on the name in the credit card account. And it's looking to say, is this credit card active? Has it been closed? Are there any alerts on this credit card? And really, though, because credit cards can be stolen so easily, this is a pretty weak level of verification for merchants. So instead, there's the next level, which is identity verification, and this is a little bit higher, and it's more effective than address and credit card verification because it's not looking at the credit card itself, but it's looking at the person or the identity. And it takes an analytical approach to say, is this identity real? Is it of a minimum age? Are there any age requirements associated with it? And basically, does this person exist? And are there any fraud flags associated with it that should concern me? And then the highest level of verification is what's called knowledge-based authentication. And this kind of takes the identity verification step a bit further. So it's not just saying, is this person legitimate? It's saying, is this person who they say they are? And it's helping you to verify that who they are claiming to be is actually really who they are. And it's these last two levels of verification that we focus on here at IDology, and that we're going to talk about for the remainder of this webinar. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to my colleague Sean Ellis to tell you a little bit more about what these solutions are and how they work. So Sean?
Thanks. Afternoon, it's Sean Ellis with IDology. I work with most of the merchants here at IDology and help them with our ID verification services. So we'll walk through the ID verification process, and at the core of the process, what we're doing is going out and hitting public data records, so things like courthouse, DMV, all kinds of licenses, utilities, and basically from those records, we're able to cast a wide net to help you ID verify your clients. So if you have individuals who are new in country, a younger demographic, or even the underbanked segment, you have a pretty good chance of finding them with public data records. Then also being able to generate those knowledge-based questions Jay spoke about. So on this page, you can see some of our clients: Macy's, Home Depot, Overstock, First Data. For Macy's, they're using this for a kiosk. And for Home Depot, looking at a fraud team. So it's basically a back office admin going through and figuring out whether or not there are identity attributes that should raise a flag in order to fill or kill an order. And then First Data, most of you probably might have actually gone through First Data's underwriting process for your credit card terminals and gone through our question product to validate your identity before they gave you a credit card machine. So with all these fraud flags, some of the bigger ones that are more concerned to you are ones, for instance, the individual is actually deceased. So you know somebody went out, stole a dead person's identity, and now they're trying to go onto your website and either buy high-dollar electronics or some other merchandise, and that transaction should probably be killed right off the beginning. And then also our identity services can be tagged with other flags such as SKU. So if you have certain high-dollar SKUs that have higher fraud, every time somebody orders an iPod, you might want them to go through the identity verification process compared to a low-dollar item. And then also, too, you can do it based off of geography. So if you have a certain zip code that's just hammering you with fraud, go ahead and have all those individuals go through the identity verification piece. Then also, too, the big one, dollar amount. So a lot of jewelers will say, any order over $5,000, I want to go ahead and present some validation questions to validate that individual's identity. And all these services, too, can be deployed either on your website through 3DCart. If you have a call center, they can use it through a call center. And also, you can do it in a back office for admin. Maybe end of the day, before you ship out orders, you want to go back through and make sure all these IDs are valid and there's no problems with the identities. So to go to our next slide, you're looking at age verification, which is really a subset of our ID verification services. And it's a very simple service where we're basically telling you in a sub-second whether or not that person is verified of age, the age you specify, so 18 or 21 usually for tobacco and alcohol, or they're verified underage. And that way, in this space, most of the merchants are trying to either stay government compliant for tobacco and alcohol, or they're trying to streamline their operations. So in the past, they might have been a smaller operation where they can have somebody fax in the order, but business is booming, they're growing, they don't want somebody to stand by the fax machine anymore, so they go ahead and have this all automated on the website for placing orders. And here you see again, besides alcohol and tobacco, you have folks like IMVU. So it's a social network. They will make sure that the person they're chatting with online is of the proper age and not somebody misrepresenting themselves. T-Mobile, they'll make sure that the person is old enough to view content that's for adults through a mobile device, so they have the proper age. And then My Wines Direct is also the wines and pipes and cigars for the tobacco. And also, too, in this space, we're seeing a lot of movement for e-cigarettes. So they're not tobacco, but a number of these merchants have thought they want to stay ahead of the regulations and go ahead and start making age verification part of the account process for this product. So they're staying ahead of the curve and want age verification for that one product. The knowledge-based authentication of this is really great for high-dollar transactions. So again, if you're a jeweler and you have a $5,000 order, you might want to go ahead and present questions to validate somebody's identity before they get sent the ring or the TV or whatever you're shipping them. And then you can see some of the clients that are right there: Tiger Direct, Merchant Warehouse, Shopper's Choice. Tiger Direct, you've probably actually seen the product online. And when you're going through the question product, keep in mind that we're going to present you with multiple questions. So These are questions that if somebody stole a handful of your mail or credit report, have a pretty hard time answering these questions. And you can dictate, according to your rules and your business needs, how many questions to present, how many answers, and then what's a pass or a fail. So when we talk about this, we're not talking about shared secrets, so we're not asking people what's your mom's maiden name or your pet's first name or your high school. These are all real-time, dynamically generated questions based off public data records. So it's much more difficult for fraudsters to get through this layer of security, and it helps you streamline your operation again, but also protect yourself from fraud. And here's an example of the question. So all this for the basic ID piece, this is all done what we call under the covers. So your client does not even know they're being ID verified or age verified, and the only time they have a hint that they're going through some kind of question process is when our questions actually get presented. So here you can see how it looks. Our questions are presented through your website, so you're not redirected anywhere else. You're keeping that customer experience on your website. You can see here questions around former addresses, who do you know? We can ask questions about what color is your 2005 Lexus, nearest intersections. There's lots of ways to ask questions to validate an identity, and we give you the ability to decide what that question presentation session is. So lots of controls so your clients go through the exact customer experience you dictate. And then here you can see again our suite of products from the basic ID, which is telling you whether or not this person exists, if there's any problems with the identity. So is the address wrong? Is it a warm address, which in our space means basically prison, hotel, P.O. box. You probably don't want to ship anything to those addresses. Problems around addresses, problems around date of birth, SSN, so lots of ID notes to indicate problems with an identity, but then also we have the expect ID age, which again is a subset of our ID verification piece, and it gives you back that either verified of age or verified underage. And then finally, the expect ID IQ, this is going to be where we go out and generate questions to help you decide whether or not the person on the other end of the phone or the web is who they say they are. And keep in mind, too, as you go into the bullet points here, we're going to help you be able to find those folks who are younger demographics, underbanked, new in country, and also with our system, one of the pieces of feedback we always get is that how easy it is to use to go in and make changes, pull reports, monitor usage. So once you get the system up and going, you have no ongoing IT costs because you can basically log into a portal, make real-time changes, hit submit, and those changes apply to either your portal or through your website. So lots of control here to deliver the exact customer experience for your client's end use, but also for you to deliver what you want as far as a business owner.
Well, thank you, Sean. I want to kind of address now some of the common misconceptions that we often hear when we're talking to retailers such as yourself. And the first one is basically identity verification hurts consumer privacy and customers will resist it. I think one of the things that's important to understand here is that at IDology, we basically only require the name and the address from the consumer in order to run a verification check. And that includes all the way up to the knowledge-based authentication solution. So we can generate a quiz using just name and address. We can verify an age without even a date of birth. We can verify that the person is real just on the name and address. But also, really what, given the problems that I talked about earlier with all the data breaches, identity verification actually better protects consumer privacy. Because we can basically verify name and address only, we're taking that information and we're kind of basically the firewall between the consumer and your business and all the data that's out there. So in reality, if you're not using an identity verification solution and you're trying to prevent fraud, you might have to go out and access all this data or store all this data or ask for a lot of data from your consumers that you then have to protect and make sure it doesn't fall in the wrong hands, both externally and also internally. You don't want to be leaving customer credit card information around for, you know, an admin to see in your company, or someone that's fulfilling your orders. And what a verification solution does is it accesses all this data in real time. So it goes out, it accesses the data that it needs, and then in return, it returns a result. So if you're verifying a minimum age, we're looking at, yes, this is of a minimum age, but we're not telling you the actual age of the consumer. And same with if you're verifying the identity. We're just going to give you the attributes that don't match, but we're not going to actually return any kind of data to you. So therefore, it actually ends up protecting consumer data, and it minimizes how much data is required to be shared within your organization and also externally. So another common misconception we hear is, I don't have any fraud, I'm not worried. And I think Sean hears this one a lot. So Sean, why don't you address this for us?
Perfect. So a lot of times you'll get a phone call on a Friday afternoon. Somebody has just gotten hit with a bunch of chargebacks. They found out that their previous month's revenue, they thought was revenue, is now all chargebacks, and they have been the victim of a fraud ring or a bunch of fraudsters coming in and basically dogpiling their website, and they're having huge losses. So they ask, what can you do to help me with this? And we see here, we have two examples, Shopper's Choice and also Zoom Electronics, or Zoom Kiosk. So the bottom one, Zoom Kiosk, you can imagine, you probably seen them at the airports before, where you can have high-end or high-dollar electronics in an airport, and all you have to do is go up and swipe a credit card, you get your iPod, you go about your business. So in this space, people were going up and basically cleaning out the kiosk. They were swiping the credit cards that was stolen, and they were telling people, you know, wrong information. So we can help with the ID verification piece on that and help them say, all right, this person is who they say they are. And then with Sonic Electronics, they saw a dramatic increase pretty quickly in the fraud. And that phone call came out and asked, what can you do to help us? And that comes back to that question product, where if I steal Joe's identity, I would not be able to answer the questions about her previous addresses, who she knows, or vehicle questions. So you can use the question product to stop these high-dollar transactions and stop the fraud. And that way, the fraudsters usually like to go somewhere where there is a path of least resistance. You put up new barricades, they go somewhere else. So you're basically saving yourself a lot of money and also future profits.
So it sounds like it's just a matter of time if you haven't had any fraud yet.
Yes, it'll happen eventually.
So common misconception number 3 is, my online business isn't big enough. It's too costly and complicated to integrate.
Okay.
So Sean, why don't you address this, because I think you probably have heard this quite often in your sales efforts.
So in this space, you have two great partners here to help you out. 3DCart, they have a proven track record of quickly and efficiently integrating IDology into your website or your cart, and that alone is going to help you make a decision, have them plug it in, and then reduce your fraudulent transactions or increase your compliance piece. And also with the IDology piece, we're a per query or per transaction based service. So we're not hitting you with a bunch of licenses or seat fees up front. You're just paying for what you use. So for a small to a medium-sized shop, it's very cost-effective. We can quickly get you up and running and also share with you some best practices across our platform that other merchants have found success with, as far as what's a pass, what's a fail, which questions are helping stop as much fraud as possible. So we can quickly get you up and running, deployed, and help you be compliant or reduce fraud.
And these two customers on the side, what size are they?
Both of them are small clients, and they were up and going pretty quickly. And we've had good feedback as far as the use of the service, both from 3DCart and IDology.
Great. So if you remember at the beginning of the webinar, basically the 3 things that I was going to cover, and hopefully by now you've learned that security and fraud really is a real concern for your business. It's growing, and it's not going to go away, and it's something that you need to address. and not addressing it puts your business at further risk of basically losing money and potentially going out of business, depending on how big the fraud hit you will take. And then also, hopefully you've learned that IDology's identity verification solutions will not only help protect your business, but will help you grow it. So we are concerned with helping you fulfill more orders faster and not slowing down the rate of business. And then finally, the common misconceptions. They really can't be used as an excuse anymore. Identity verification is simple to use, and it's simple to get integrated into your business, and the benefits and rewards will pay you back in threefold. So with that, I would like to open up the floor and see if anybody has any questions.
Okay, I'm going to give folks a little bit of time to start typing their questions in there. I just wanted to add, you know, this was very, very informative, but I got to speak for myself. I've actually had my debit card compromised. The information was compromised one time, and I got to tell you, it's an awful, awful feeling. So it's really nice to see what's possible with the technology you guys have to not only protect the merchant, but also the consumer, because ever since that happened, and like I said, it's an awful feeling, I've been more careful to, when I purchase online, to look for certain little things like that as well, just to protect myself. So it's really nice that you guys have the ability to do that. So I'm sure a lot of our merchants.
Well, thanks, Henry. And you know, you actually bring up a good point. One of the things that we do provide here at IDology is we offer, I think a lot of people, a lot of consumers, as they become more familiar with the things that merchants are doing to help protect them, they do look for things on their website that, you know, basically recognize that it's a real merchant and that they are concerned with their consumers' identities, etc. And one of the things that we provide is a logo. It's what we call our ID verified logo, and several merchants are able to put it on their website that along with the identity verification process, especially if they're asking questions, so that consumers will kind of know, oh, my identity is being protected, and it just serves as a way to let consumers know that merchants are concerned with their identities.
Awesome.
Keeping them.
Well, it looks like we have a question here. Does your technology meet legal age requirements in California for screening buyers of electronic cigarettes? I think Sean mentioned earlier about e-cigarettes. I guess in California they have specific age requirements for those. Could you answer that?
Sure. So it depends on which state. So a number of different states were actually, the state government has told us that we're a preferred vendor, Michigan and Oklahoma for wine shipments, or Kansas for wine shipments. And then for California, I have to look at the regulations and specifically because California usually has tougher laws than everybody else, but we can definitely go out, hit the records, and then tell you whether or not that individual meets your age requirements. So if it's 18 or 21 or whatever California is dictating, we could help that business, that merchant, go out, verify, and then more importantly, once you verify, we give you the tools in our reports to have an audit trail. So if California ever comes back on you and says, what did you do to verify that this consumer was a proper age, you can go back into our records and get a time, date stamp, the transaction, the outcome, so you're always making sure that you're compliant, but you can also show in an audit that you're compliant. So we can definitely help you out, and I'll, after this call, look in more in detail about the California regulations.
Awesome. Another question came up. Which solution is most recommended? You mentioned there was three, the identity, age, and the knowledge base. Which is a more recommended one that you would use for the businesses?
Typically the one I see the most traction with is for the question product. So that usually is followed by a merchant having a really bad month where they get a bunch of chargebacks because identity theft, somebody has stolen credit cards or identities and milked them out of a bunch of products, went ahead and resold those products, and now that merchant is left holding the bag, a lot of chargebacks and very small profits for that month. And that's when the question product becomes very useful. And that's with anything from, for instance, high-end electronics, jewelry, or even we have some clients who auction off very high-end wine. So a bottle of wine could be $500. You get a case of that. That's up to $2,000 for a case of wine. So it depends. But anywhere where you have usually high dollar transactions, that's where the KBA hops in and really gives you that level of comfort that that is who they say it is, and also to help you thwart the fraudsters and make sure they're not going to single you out for a dog pile.
I think it's also important to understand kind of what the needs of a business are before you can make a recommendation of the solution. But ideally, you know, the way that transactions, the way that you can set it up with IDology is, you know, you don't have to run a question session on every single one of your customers. You can use some of the controls that we have in place to like only offer questions on high-risk transactions. So, you know, like Sean alluded to earlier, you use it when you pay for it when you use it, and you use it when you need it. So that's one way of looking at it. And then also, all of our solutions basically escalate up to one another. So you can start at the bottom and basically run, you know, the undercovers check of just the identity verification. The expect ID is what we call it. And if there are potential fraud flags, like maybe it's a high-risk address as indicated with this person, you might want to escalate at that point up to a question session.
Cool, good to know. Well, it looks like that's all the questions we've got for now. I want to thank you guys for presenting this for us, and I'm sure a lot of our merchants will definitely be able to use it. Like I said, personally speaking, as someone who did have their identity, well, not the whole identity, thank goodness, but just the debit card information, it's a scary thing, and I really appreciate that you guys have that. So thanks again.